Happening now. We'd like to welcome our viewers from across North America and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room, episode 318 for January the 24th, 2024. My name is Wes Fryer. I'm coming to you from Matthews, North Carolina, where I am a middle school STEM and media literacy teacher. And I am joined, as always, by the EdTech Yoda of the North, looking the part in flannel even. It's Dr. Jason Neiffer from Missoula, Montana. How are you, Jason?
Good evening, Dr. Fryer. I'm well. I'm actually joining you from Great Falls, Montana tonight, where I'm hanging out with the Neiffer parental units, which means I'm joining you from my parents' basement. So that's always the sign of success when you hit 50 and you're hanging out in your parents' basement. But here I am tonight joining you live from my mom's quilting room, actually. You can see in the background that many
virtual background tonight. That's the real thing.
Yeah, hey, it seems like it might be not real, but it's real. So
we'll tell you to just enjoy every moment. And I think I've joined from Kansas, from where my dad is, and we're probably going to head out their spring break. So it reminds me of what was it called? Over the Pond and Through the Fiber. It was a Skype cast, that we did with Ewan McIntosh over in the UK, I think, and Miguel Gulen and whatever. And that was like so cool. And it still is. It still is cool to do this.
It really is. And I was just remembering, I can't remember the name of the show, but it was a pre-podcast. It was before podcasting was really, it was a podcast, but can't remember the name of the show, but it was really amazing because, and I just dropped in every couple of weeks to say hi. So it used to be that the whole notion of, two guys from North Carolina and Montana broadcasting, well, really worldwide, not all that long ago, 20 years ago, in fact, that would have been considered to be kind of silly and ridiculous and futuristic. And now here we are. So, I'm still blown away that this tech even works, to be quite frank. So,
and having worked with this for a bit, latency is the key, because is there a delay? And I mean, I was on a three-way just iPhone call tonight with my dad and sister, and there was enough latency. There was a little stepping on back and forth, but I mean, there is virtually zero delay or latency in this call, and it's just amazing. So
pretty great.
Do have a live viewer that maybe Dad, he was gonna decide whether the K-State Iowa State basketball game was more exciting. I told him to go for basketball, but who knows? It could also be Betsy, and Betsy joined us for our AI Playdate on Saturday, which was awesome. So again, great to have Betsy from, I think, Northern Michigan, and we had Ryan Collins from outside Columbus, Ohio, and we actually had two teachers from my high school who I have never done professional development with, and they jumped on a Saturday, and then we had a man from Pakistan who was on briefly, but did have some latency. But it's just crazy, and folks, this is hopefully, barring an EMP or some kind of devastating, solar flare,
immediately goes to an EMP.
This is hopefully, what is Wes watching on YouTube? Maybe it's grid down, power up. Maybe so. That's not my geek of the week, but this is hopefully going to be the worst that we're going to be using. Like, it's just going to continue to get better. So,
and I think that's probably the way it's going to be. So
we can hope so. All right. Well, Dr. Neiffer, what are we going to be up to today besides pontificating on things unrelated to EdTech? Are we going to talk about tech?
I certainly enjoy a good pontification, but we have scoured the internet looking for information to share with you, our audience. Tonight, we'll be talking about AI and many subcategories under AI. There's quite a bit of interesting Google news in the last couple weeks, some Apple news, a little bit of Microsoft to round things out, our miscellaneous category, which is always a good time, and then tonight, with our Geeks of the Week. Hello, Jason Springer in the room tonight, and he watches as well. So
there you go. Awesome. It's a family affair. There you go. And I'm going to guess it's probably a little cold. Hey, we didn't do the weather update. How cold? What was the coldest you got here in the last couple of weeks? Did you hit negative 30 or something ridiculous?
Missoula was in the negative 20s. In Montana, it was negative 51. In Saco, Montana, and the reason why I know that is because I talked to the Saco superintendent a couple days after that happened. It's going to be warmer next week, and I think here in Great Falls, which gets what we call the Chinook winds that come down from the north, warm Chinook winds, it's going to be 55 here one day, not below zero, above zero, but still pretty extraordinary weather.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, we have dropped into our show notes, the wonderful edtechsr.com/links. And if any of our live viewers would like to give us any suggestions for things you'd like us to talk about on that list, or otherwise, we would be glad to. Where would you like to start tonight, Jason?
Well, let's go ahead and go through our traditional news because there's lots of interesting things to talk about. If you don't mind, I'd love to start with Google.
Go for it.
Well, I have a couple Chromebook updates, which are super interesting. Two of them, as a matter of fact. The first one is from About Chromebooks on January 21st. Kevin Toffel reports that Chrome OS 122 is bringing something they call focus mode to Chromebooks, which is a timer that essentially allows you to Pomodoro technique up your Chromebook. And it's pretty simple to use, according to Mr. Toffel. From there, I believe that you can limit what is shown on the screen, or I believe also might even pause a chat as well during the time. So when the focus icon appears, it may have task integration into it in the future, but the reason why I'm mentioning this, well, let me tell you the other article that I'm also focusing on and kind of make a broader point here. The other article comes from the other major source on Chrome News. This is Chrome Unboxed. This was a little earlier this month, I believe on January 6th, and Robbie Payne records a video where he goes into the beta and turns on a new feature in Chrome OS, which is custom buttons on peripherals like mice. And the reason why this is interesting to me is that, my primary platform is Apple platforms. I use an iPhone, I use an iPad, I use a MacBook Air, and a Mac Mini at work. But I still do use Chrome devices quite a bit. In fact, right now, I'm on a Chromebook. And I'm carrying both with me. It's not like I'm not carrying both, but I am using a Chromebook tonight as part of my process, and really love it. But it's just interesting to me how Chrome OS becomes more and more feature rich. And in fact, I really do think that, assuming you don't need a high-end software platform, something like a pro video editor, that you could probably get away with a professional Chromebook as a primary driver. And certainly I've been able to get away with it for several years now. And again, I'm not a super into a single laptops in my life. I own quite a few, as a matter of fact, because I like going from platform to platform because I'm a nerd. But I do think there's something to the additional ability to kind of tweak your environment. And I'm particularly interested in the functionality that is the being able to customize your mouse. I pulled that off for a couple of years by taking a Logitech gaming mouse, which is programmable on a PC, and then programming the gaming buttons to do different things like switch between windows, or switch between tabs, or switch between Google accounts. And as it turns out, that functionality went away because I wasn't able to get it to work anymore on Chrome OS. The buttons were still programmed, but for some reason it doesn't work. So I would definitely be a fan of being able to take programmable mouse buttons, either a gaming mouse or one of the advanced Logitech mice, and customizing that to make myself more productive.
Have you used the Apple Focus features that much in terms of being able to turn things on and off?
Yeah, I do in two ways. I do use the nighttime focus at night, so that it shuts off and turns off for example, my texting notifications. And I also love the presentation mode, because if I'm using my MacBook and put it into presentation mode, it will turn off what are sometimes embarrassing message notifications. Well, not embarrassing, but silly, like my wife sent me a heart or something. And
disruptive.
Yeah, disruptive. That's a good way of putting it. But I will tell you, the reason why I'm not necessarily using them the way I probably should is because it does turn off my blood sugar meter.
Ah.
And
You can't prioritize that?
you
That was
can, but it doesn't work consistently. And I don't blame Apple for
mm,
that. I blame Dexcom that makes the
yeah.
app that supports my glucose reader, but that's my only issue. And there's a similar set of functionality on Chrome OS with your Android phone as well, and that actually syncs up pretty well. And one of the cool features in Chrome OS, if you have an Android phone, which I, of course, carry an Android phone too, is that it has
Of course.
integration. Yeah, of course I do, right? It has an integration directly in the phone, so I can actually click on a little button on Chrome OS and see all my notifications on my Android phone. I can even stream apps to my Chromebook. So I'm a big ecosystem guy. I think ecosystems are where it's at. I could be very happy in a Google only ecosystem. I could be very happy in an Apple only ecosystem because these tools just work so wonderfully together.
I just had a thought, and this is not. I want to do the other Google articles too. Not this summer, but next summer, we have a goal to go back up to Wyoming. Where our relatives
Mhm.
are. We're not that far away from Missoula. What if
Yeah.
we did some kind of summer event that was like digital magic tricks with the EdTech Situation Room?
Yeah.
And we did. We could co-locate with some breweries. We could sort of try to seize the vibe of the Moodle Mootin, perhaps. I don't know. Something to think about. Okay,
Yep.
I got two Google articles. This first one, generative AI integrating into Chrome. One of the things that's come up in multiple discussions, these tools are powerful. What can kids use? What can kids under 13 use legally? So the next update to Chrome, this is from Engadget on January 23rd. It's going to offer to organize your tabs in similar collections. And I can think of a few administrators that I have known through the years and probably myself too sometimes. But I've known some people that have an obscene number of tabs that they'll have open. And so anyway, that's going to be a feature. It's going to be able to customize the look of the search engine and help you draft text. And so it's going to be an experimental AI toggle that you have to flip on in the settings page. But this is something I think we're going to see different companies do, and that is to leverage their platforms. Apple, when they do come into the marketplace, and I think I need to look, but I heard about an article. I'll see if I can find that, or maybe you've already got it as far as their promised investment. But Google has access for those of us that are Gmail and Google education users, workspace users. That's where our messages live. That's where our documents live. That's where a lot of our data lives. And so being able to leverage that access and being able to give us the ability to work directly with that is a big deal. And I don't know about the Montana Digital Academy. I'm going to guess that probably, Firefox or Chrome. But I think our kids have iPads. Many of them are using Safari, but many of them are using Chrome. And, as a teacher, I have other browsers, but I'm using Chrome 99.8% of my time. So I think it's going to be exciting to see this, and it's also going to be logical for companies to try and provide an option. Hey, you're already in our ecosystem. You're already in our device. Here you go. You can go ahead and utilize our tools. And then the other one, which is kind of funny, I put them under Google, but they could go under the AI category as well, is from Ars Technica on January 24th. And I just saw this one before the show started. Google's latest AI video generator can render cute animals in implausible situations. And so it is called Lumiere. It's Lumiere. And so there's a little video showing, and you knew this is coming, and it's already here. I mean, with deepfake videos and things like that. But this is a project, Lumiere-video.github.io. It's called a space-time diffusion model for realistic video generation. So, like other powerful tools, this one is going to be able to be utilized in wonderful, great ways and in ways that are not so great. Text to video, and you can hover over the video and see the prompt that was used to create it. You can also do image to video. So if you've got a picture and you'd like to see it, Harry Potter style in in motion. You can stylize them. And then there's some explanation about, exactly how it does it. In fact, if you scroll down on that page to video stylization, I think it is pretty fascinating to see source video, and then how you can, make that video out of wooden blocks or origami folded paper or colorful toy bricks or made of flowers. I mean, anyway, I just have begun to explore it because, like I said, I just discovered it. So the good folks at Google are not sitting back and just letting OpenAI and Microsoft have all the fun when it comes to these tools.
No, and I mean, I do think that there's obviously a lot of work to do to find scalable AI tools for students. I think its propensity to make things up. I'm trying to avoid the term hallucination, which I think I agree with a lot of folks is problematic in a number of ways. But to kind of make things up or conjure up things that perhaps aren't based in reality, I think that's problematic. As is the propensity of AI models to be trainable for not good things. You can do a lot of kind of weird things with them. But that all said, I do also strongly believe that we're going to have to figure out a way to get them in students' hands. And so if this is the way to do that, I think that's great.
Sounds good. You want to move on to some Apple stuff?
Sure. This is kind of a follow-up from a conversation we had last week. But Apple is, according to Bloomberg, is drawing a lot of people really angry about its way of handling the court cases that compel Apple to allow outside payment structures, and a bunch of new rules in play here. Many of them are aimed at companies that go to outside payment structures to avoid the so-called Apple tax, the 30% that they're charging a lot of larger app developers. And the super bottom line for me that I think is super interesting is that I'm still mixed on this, because I think that there is a reason to have a walled garden like Apple offers. But the bottom line is that it's annoying an awful lot of people and may subject Apple to further scrutiny.
I found an article similar to what I had said. I'd heard someone talk about something like $1 trillion investment or something. I didn't find that, but the Financial Times yesterday on January 23rd, quote, the article is Apple boosts plans to bring generative AI to iPhones. And this is sort of, reading the signs of acquisitions, job postings, academic papers. It says that almost half of Apple's AI job postings now include deep learning, they are typically secretive about all kinds of things. And as we've mentioned before, maybe we even said it last week when it came to the Apple VR headset, their playbook is to not be the first to the market, but to come to the market after doing lots of homework and then really dominate and possibly even redefine the marketplace. So it is going to be very interesting and exciting to see what Apple does, especially as I would think they'll continue their focus on privacy and onboard, execution of the LLM, of the AI algorithms. I think we talked about this on the show a while back, and it may have just been something that I read, but they have in their research papers and patents and publications indicated that they are shifting the processing of the AI computation. Like now, NVIDIA and video RAM chips, I guess, are really utilized a lot by the algorithms. And so with the iPhone, Apple has a lot of solid state storage and other kinds of memory. And I'm not geeky enough to pretend like I completely understand it, but basically they're setting the table for the iPhone to be able to do some extremely hefty AI generative processing, and to do that on board with the hardware that they have now. And so I think those things will be pretty exciting to watch. And again, it'll be valuable to have multiple companies doing this, especially ones that I think have a genuine commitment to privacy. I know that it furthers Apple's bottom line, and I'm hopefully not being overly naive about that, but I think it is laudable, and it's important. Privacy is important.
Yep, absolutely true. And I don't know. I'm obviously an apple Kool-Aid drinker, and in fact, now that I've said that, I'm going to drink a little bit of fruit punch here. But they do tend to be a little more elegant in some of these implementations, right? And that relates to the other article that is from Mac Rumors on January 22nd. There's apparently been some rumors of up to 180,000 Vision Pro headsets that have been pre-ordered. That's a much higher number than I would have assumed. I think Apple should be celebrating 50,000 of them if that's the number that they sold. But 180,000 suggests to me there's a lot of interest around this space. And again, I'm not a version 1 customer. Dr. Fryer is not a version 1 customer, and we're Apple people. But I do think the versions 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of this may be great. And I just like to remind everyone, the first iPhone was kind of a piece of crap. It was wonky. It didn't have the ability to install apps. You couldn't even change the background.
It didn't have an app store. Yeah, that came later.
It didn't have a version, or it didn't have the ability to change the wallpaper on the phone. You couldn't do folders. There was just a lot of reasons why the early iPhones, and this includes the 3G too. It took a while to get to the device that it is today. Same true of early Android phones. Early Android phones were toys, and it took a while to get there. But once they got there, they were great pieces of technology, and Apple was able to evolve quickly based on consumer response and demand. So definitely, I think something interesting coming soon.
And if we're talking about the Vision Pro headsets, this is interesting. I'd seen this a couple places, and this is a PC Magazine article from today. Bots may have nabbed thousands of Apple Vision Pro pre-orders. I think I saw in another article that some of these resellers have been charging up to $10,000 to be able to get one of these because the pre-orders all, you can no longer do that. They've run out. This says that one scalper run bot was used to successfully check out 1,592 Vision Pro pre-orders. And that was from Caseta, a anti-bot company. And the other article, which I didn't put in here, maybe this one talks about it, says that I think maybe facial ID or some kind of facial recognition, there was going to be some kind of security that was going to try to prevent the bots from ordering, and it completely failed. So I think that's very telling because, again, Apple's technology is very robust. And so the inability of Apple to use current technology to prevent an algorithm from acting as a human and making this order, is probably a sign of the times in itself. So I am really looking forward to this technology improving. And I think that we have Ready Player One. If you've seen the movie, if you've read the book, fantastic vision of the future. You have to bring developers with you though, and you can't just have the hardware. And I think that was Facebook or Meta's mistake in Mark Zuckerberg getting so excited about that technology. Apple continues to do a great job with their Worldwide Developer Conference and the ways in which they cater to developers. And as we will hear lots of hand-wringing about the App Store, app developers can make money. And this is actually a pretty important thing because if folks can't make money in a sustainable, living, they're going to have to do something else. And so anyway, I'm very excited for this. And I'm curious if and Betsy or if anybody else knows who's in the chat room. I don't know if you can see these in the Apple Store yet, but I'm going to try to find out. And Apple has these little classes that they offer in their stores. And so as soon as they are offering some demo classes, just to get to see it and learn a little bit more about it, it's going to be pretty exciting to check it out. Although I'm not going to be buying it if it's more than $1,000 probably.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm thinking about in regards to this is that I have no idea I would invest in a $3,500 device if I knew it was going to get 6, 7, 8 years of time. We don't know anything about this device yet. There's also questions about the battery and the fit on the head. I think Apple will figure those things out as they have. I mean, AirPods, when they were first released, were much maligned because they didn't fit very well in ears and yada, yada, yada. And now, I mean, I still know some people that have original AirPods that still use them every single day. And so that's a value, right? But we'll have to figure that out over time.
Okay.
And then one other quick article, Dr. Fryer. This is kind of a practical piece of advice. This is from CBS News yesterday. iOS 17.3 has been released. I did install a beta version of it first because I was trying to fix an app problem, but the iOS 17.3 release has one really incredible new feature, which is that it has something called stolen device protection, which is kind of an interesting system. It essentially, once you turn it on, stops if someone has your passcode. And you try to access sensitive things like changing your passcode or other things that would be a pattern suggesting that someone's trying to access your account with your stolen or lost iPhone, it forces the biometrics to kick in so that they can't access it with just the passcode, which I think is super interesting. It kind of makes that much more functional. You have to opt into it via the security settings, but I thought that was a very interesting new means of protecting your phone.
And that segues real well to an article I put under miscellaneous. This is an Ars Technica article from today, January 24th. Mugger take your phone, cash apps too easily let thieves drain accounts, district attorney says. I have thought about this quite a bit because it really is dizzying now. Just as a classroom teacher or person who's selling something on Facebook Marketplace, we all need to be very aware of the different vulnerabilities, positives and negatives of using the Cash App, using Zelly, using PayPal, all of these kinds of things. I think Zelly is really important that you only use it with like true family or close friends. And so if you're buying something or selling something on Facebook Marketplace, there's apps to avoid. But basically this is saying that if somebody gets your phone and they're able to open it, they could probably drain your bank account if you happen to have, the Cash App on your phone and you're signed in. Boom, your money is gone. And so, while a credit card or a debit card, I think they've increased that as well. It used to be that credit cards, had more protection. Your bank is going to be protecting that. I don't think that you have that kind of protection for Cash Apps. And so, the New York Police Department saying they have been increasingly prosecuting crimes where phones are commandeered by bad actors to quickly steal large amounts of money through financial apps. And so it says this can happen when somebody asks to use your phone for a personal purpose. They can quickly do that. And then it says in the most disturbing cases, offenders have violently assaulted or drugged victims and either compelled them to provide a password for a device or use biometric ID, meaning they have put the phone in front of their face or put their thumb on it to open the victim's phone before transferring money once the individual is incapacitated. So I guess the lesson learned is, number one, enable the security features that you have. I'm glad that Apple has some enhanced stolen device protection features. But based on this, I think you should consider not having your Cash apps logged in. And then having that password manager require your master password and not use Face ID or your thumbprint. I don't know if you've ever done this with your spouse, Jason, but I have been guilty, needing to use using my wife's phone, and she's there and I just, move it over, hold it in front of her face, put it back, and she's just logged in. But man, thinking about being mugged and then having somebody do that, that is hopefully Missoula and Bozeman, you're not New York City, and I don't think we are here in Charlotte, although every city has crime. So we got to be careful out there, folks. And this is something that I personally had not really thought of when it comes to the Cash App. The more that we rely on these digital tools to conduct our daily buying and selling and moving money and all those kinds of things, the more they are targets for bad actors.
Very interesting stuff. Okay, we got a couple other random ones here before we jump into AI. You want to cover any of the others?
Absolutely. Let's talk about the National EdTech Plan. I think someone I know was featured in that. This is from a website called Government Technology. You can find some other references to this in Google News. The National Educational Technology Plan received an update. Shout out to our friend Bearden. Oh, gosh, am I going to forget her first name? Susan Bearden, who is wonderful. And she was actually in the White House as a fellow working on educational technology during the Obama administration. This plan has not been updated since 2017. It is a 113-page descriptive and prescriptive document from the U.S. Department of Education laying out a plan for the nation's school districts to close the digital divide in how technology is designed, accessed, and used. And while I have not read the updated plan, which is called that call to action, I understand that the Montana Digital Academy was mentioned by name, and the progressive way in which you all are offering a course on AI and just continuing to do fantastic things. So kudos to you and your colleagues for that recognition. And I think a shout out for all of our listeners who might be interested in educational technology. This is a really important document to read, and hey, we can also grab it and throw it into ChatGPT and ask for a summary too, if you don't want to read articles like this. But it's in fact, I've been using ChatGPT and other tools like Magic School, which I got to play with for the first time because of our AI Playdate. To make Jeopardy games, and I think I am, as a teacher, going to be utilizing more games because it's just so much easier to use AI to generate questions and be able to create those kinds of materials that I'm not going to go on Teachers Pay Teachers and probably pay for, but if I can generate them quickly. And so, like, I could see, Jason, if you would be, giving a presentation to a group or whatever, like, here's a quick little Kahoot, let's do it. And the topic is the EdTech plan. We just fed it into ChatGPT and got 5 questions. Here we go. And that being able to use AI in that way to not only help us summarize and learn, but also perhaps quiz, make games, all that. This is a seriously important document, and I'm really glad to see this update. So, how did you hear about your organization being named there? Was that something?
Yeah, I had already downloaded the plan because I was going to read it, because I know some folks that second and third hand I knew were part of the effort, and I do know some folks that have been in and out of the Department of Education the last year or so, and I admired their work. I also thought the DOE did a really great job. I'm sorry, I don't believe they call it that in Washington D.C. Education is what they call it, or ed. It had to, I like the work they did on the first kind of broad guidance on generative AI earlier this year. So I downloaded the document already and stuck it into my kind of document reader folder in my iPad, and then someone had tweeted MTDA noting that we were mentioned in there, and so I did take a closer look, and yeah, sure, a whole call-out box about the work we're doing in providing instruction in AI. So good stuff. Really excited about it, and I've probably read maybe about a fourth of it so far, and it's pretty solid, I think, and acknowledges that technology integration keeps me more interesting and nuanced for sure.
Here's the last article under our wonderful miscellaneous category. And this one is just kind of mind-blowing in terms of thinking about access to information and just what a different reality, folks are in places like North Korea. This is a BBC article from January the 18th, and the title is "Rare Footage Shows Teens Sentenced to Hard Labor Over K-Drama." And basically, North Koreans are completely banned from watching any kind of South Korean entertainment. There is severe punishment. And that can include, being sent to a labor camp. And it says, in the past, minors who broke the law would be sent to youth labor camps rather than put behind bars, and punishment was usually less than 5 years. However, they have now enacted a law, they did in 2020, I guess, so three years ago, they can punish by death for either watching or distributing South Korean entertainment. And a defector had previously told BBC some terrible things that I'm not going to say on air about, just horrible things. So it just blows your mind. But I think it also speaks to the importance of information, the power of information, and the recognition that authoritarian regimes like those in North Korea have for what can happen when you have access to information that lets you see that, life is different. There's other worlds out there. Not everybody is living, in the same sort of conditions that they are living in North Korea. And so I thought that was rather stunning, and certainly, something that makes me feel even more fortunate to have the relatively unfettered access that we do to so many different, not only technology tools, but just streams of information, and being able to live in a very free society.
Yep, absolutely so.
Okay, we want to do any privacy or Microsoft, or shall we jump into the AI world?
Why don't you do the one about the reading tutor?
Okay, Microsoft, the day after our last show on January 18th, TechCrunch announced, has made its AI-powered reading tutor available completely free. And I think that tools like this that are going to be customized and designed specifically for education are just extremely, extremely exciting. And so Microsoft's press release or blog post is saying, with the latest AI technology, we have the opportunity to provide learners with personalized, engaging, and transformative learning experiences. And so there's a plugin for Teams called Reading Progress, inspired by the success of that. They launched Reading Coach in 2022 as part of Teams for Education, and also Immersive Reader. As longtime listeners of the show will know, I am generally not a huge voluntary user of Microsoft tools, with the exception of Minecraft. I love Minecraft, and I actually can't say enough positive about that in Make Code right now, because I'm just loving that. So I'm not here to bash Microsoft. In fact, I'm here to praise them, because I think releasing this AI-powered reading tutor is great, and I think that might be even a good tool to add to a list of possible tools to play with at an EdTech Playdate. One of the things I think I took away, and I need to write a blog post about this, is, at the Playdate, it's so easy to be overwhelmed. And I think one of the goals should be, if you happen to organize one of these or host them, to really pre-select some tools. And not that everybody has to do those. People can play with the tools that they want to play with. But I think that those which are most customized and refined for education and will offer some immediate time savings or transformative learning experiences, like a personalized, reading experience, it's a really big deal. And so I'm excited about this. Had you heard about this or been familiar with what Microsoft was doing with their reading tutors?
Yes, in fact, I've seen a lot of briefings on it, and Northwest Council for Computer Education, which I work a lot with, and help out that team, or I should say I'm part of that team. They've been doing a lot of training work in these tools, and it's extremely impressive. I think that it's very smart to overlay tools on top of really content agnostic, right? And that's always been not my criticism, but my concern about, there are a lot of learning tools that exist to offer additional functionality. For example, like a textbook company may have an overlay onto that, but the fact that a lot of these tools are in essence available for any content like the web, I think is really super great. And I agree that this is a really great release for Microsoft, and I think it does show its commitment to providing great tools for education.
I'll tell a fast story. So let's go back 20 years to 2003. I am in Lubbock, Texas at the College of Education at Texas Tech. I'm the director of distance learning. I learn about a pilot grant initiative the state of Texas is releasing called TexTip. It's the Texas Immersion Pilot Project. They're going to select 22 middle schools across the state, and they're going to give them money to get laptops. And so I decide, hey, I think I'm going to write some grants. And I end up writing grants successfully that gets Floyd Data Texas and Post Texas to all get MacBook laptops. But that's not all, because part of the package is the curriculum. And so what I thought was there were like great virtual manipulatives and different things. But My Access Writing, which was since purchased by Vantage Education, that's still available on myaccess.com. I don't know how much it costs, but 20 years ago, this was very transformative in terms of feedback for students with writing, and the research is very clear as far as the frequency of feedback, the speed of feedback that students get with their writing can be incredibly beneficial. So whether we're talking about reading or writing, being able to utilize these kinds of tools to not merely replicate the same kind of traditional learning experiences that adults today may have had, but seek truly personalized, customized, interactive, rapid feedback sorts of learning interactions. I don't think we want to simply put all of our learners on the computer and send them off to do school by themselves. But there's going to be all sorts of situations, and those kinds of tools should absolutely not be ignored. And I think that it's always been a busy time for educational technologists because there are always new products coming out. I think that the advent of generative AI and LLMs has just really pushed the accelerator even further on that. So I'll be eager to learn more about this as well, and find out how, especially since it's free, these kinds of tools can be used, whether it's teachers using it in the classroom with lessons, or it's simply, letting students know, much like we might Khan Academy. Hey, did you know Khan Academy is free and you can, utilize those tools? Perhaps this is going to be another one to add to a toolkit list for teachers to recommend to parents and students to be utilizing on their own for additional instruction and learning.
Okay, well, shall we pull the string of AI and see where it leads us?
Let's do it. We have a third of our show left, and we've got plenty of articles. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, let me just do a quick piece here. This is from CNBC on January 18th. This was announced widely last week, but Mark Zuckerberg has announced that Meta, a company that owns Facebook, is going to be investing billions of dollars in hardware for generative AI. And they're talking a lot about these video models that are really great at generative AI. And I've heard two different numbers. This article suggests about $10 billion. I also read an article last week that suggested $20 billion. But in 2024, Meta is going to buy an awful lot of capacity, physical capacity, to continue to increase the abilities of its AI model known as Llama. And a lot of the articles referred to Llama 3, which is the next generation of the Llama model. And remember, the thing that's interesting about Mr. Zuckerberg's play here is that Llama is an open source project. So once Llama is released into the wild, that means anyone can take that and do interesting things with it. Of course, as we talked about in the past, there is a lot of concern about open source AI models because it gives an awfully powerful tool to anyone that wants to download it, even for nefarious purposes. But it also means that it's democratizing, and that anyone may be able to access these models. Whether it works or not on modest hardware is a whole different story, but interesting development from Facebook.
Absolutely. Let's jump down to the AI regulation category. And I thought this was fascinating. This is from the Association of Research Libraries on January 23rd. Training generative AI models on copyrighted works is fair use. As we've talked about on the show, we've got some pretty important lawsuit cases that are moving forward. The New York Times filed suit against OpenAI and was claiming that not only the ingestion of their content, but the regurgitation of verbatim transcripts and verbatim, long form pieces of articles that are behind a paywall was against copyright. And I'll talk a little bit about some discoveries related to that in my Geek of the Week. This is an opinion piece, and so this was written by Catherine Klosek, who's Director of Information Policy and Federal Relations for the ARL, the Association of Research Libraries, along with Marjorie Blumenthal. And so they are basically weighing in for fair use. They do not think that copyright law and fair use law specifically needs to be updated for an AI world. They think that there are plenty of provisions and these aren't their terms, but I'll just say flexibility. I was going to use another term, but basically the law works. It can be applied here. And so it is saying that the ingestion of copyrighted works to create large language models or other AI training databases is generally fair use. And so we've talked about this a little on the show in terms of, these AIs and entities, and do they have rights? It's interesting, unless this has changed, that I don't think you can copyright a work that you have created with a generative AI tool right now, because they're not considering that AI to be an entity, like a sentient being, and so it doesn't have rights. But I think that I'm leaning towards this opinion, in that, and again, this is for the training of the models. Jason and I are not going to go into an art museum and upon leaving, be told that you've broken the law because you looked at all the paintings that were on the walls. I mean, that's going to be fine. Now, if we took a picture of it and then tried to do something with that exact duplicate of it, then that's a different story. So anyway, I thought this was interesting. Any thoughts you have on this?
Yeah, I mean, and one of the reasons why I'm not panicking about the copyright discussion, and we talked about this in a couple episodes past, that Hard Fork talked to an IP lawyer and said that that they weren't all that concerned that copyright discussions would stop innovation, in part because Spotify figured a way out of that. And remember, 25 years ago, the whole notion of freely downloadable music, the Napster era, was taken down with intellectual property pieces because they had no means to compensate creators. Well, as it turns out, Spotify did, and so Spotify still exists. There's, of course, lots of debates around the notion of whether they're getting enough money to compensate them for their work, but that's a different discussion than stopping it altogether. And I have somewhat of a related article. This is from the Next Web on January 18th, that there is a company that's working on copyright compliant AI. They just haven't awarded certificates to the big players like ChatGPT, Microsoft, Meta, etc. The reason why this is interesting to me is that it doesn't really matter, I think, if someone issues a certificate to a company, if that company's not getting used or if their models aren't in the marketplace. But we're figuring it out, right? The market's messy. It always has been. It will clean up these issues, I assume, but don't assume that there isn't a way out for these companies, because I think there is. And even if there's not a way out, then there's another article. This one's from the New Yorker on January 15th that says that perhaps this ends up being the death of intellectual property or copyright protection. If we can't figure out a way to have both these technologies exist together, I don't think I would like to get rid of protection of intellectual property, but there are plenty of folks that believe that we have too strong of protections for copyright right now. Remember the very recently, the very first kind of machination of Mickey Mouse became public domain after a century of extraordinary profits for the Disney Corporation based on Mickey Mouse stuff
and copyright extensions that they were able to obtain.
Many copyright extensions that were led by companies like Disney, and now that has been rendered outside the copyright protection. I don't see Disney losing a lot of money anytime soon. And of course, we're talking about one of the largest corporations in history. But still, I do think the discussions that may pop up based on what AI does and how AI trains at some point may create some whole new expectations around these technologies.
And two things to draw out, one from that article and one from what you've shared about Claude. The article from the Next Web about fairly trained certificates talks about an OpenAI employee, or no, was it OpenAI? An employee who uh, attracted headlines after quitting Stability AI over the startup's use of copyrighted content. The 36-year-old raised concerns that the company was, quote, exploiting creators. And there are a fair number of artists of who I have interacted with, some on social media and then read articles about, that really want people to boycott generative AI entirely and believe that it's just terrible. You are the one, Jason, who mentioned and drew my attention to Claude.ai from Anthropic, and this whole idea of constitutional AI. And so, as we are all learning about AI and these different tools, I think it's really, really important to understand that companies are taking different public stances when it comes to ethics and the use of their tools. And I think that these conversations are really important. And I don't know how many students and teachers are having opportunities to have these today, but they're super important because, again, as a public, we need to be informed, and our representatives need to be informed, because there are roles for regulation in all of this, as well as just choices that we're going to make and that our organizations are going to make related to these tools. Let me do a quick ethics bad actors one. This is MSNBC on January 22nd, and hopefully this is not going to be a headline that we're going to just be hearing all the time, but we will not go into detail. But of course, there have been some primaries for the Republican Party in Iowa and in New Hampshire. And so this is NBC News on January 22nd, and the headline is "Fake Joe Biden robocall tells New Hampshire Democrats not to vote on Tuesday." And so that article actually has a recording, and it does sound, I think, fairly Joe Bidenish. And it uses a phrase, "what a bunch of malarkey," I guess, that is a favorite term that Biden has uttered before and used. It reminds me of my previous school when we were getting some what are called spear phishing attacks, and we had people impersonating our head of school with a Gmail account that looked a lot like his. But of course, it was at Gmail. But then it would sign it with the exact way that he liked to sign in a closing, the email. And so, anyway, this kind of malicious, trying to affect elections through, falsely impersonating, in this case, the president of the United States. I think that we're going to see more of these, and we've predicted that, and indeed that happened. Did that have an impact on what the votes were in New Hampshire or New Hampshire? I don't think so. But this is going to, I think, continue to be part of the landscape of politics, and it's also going to overlay in our lives in other ways as well. My neighbor had said that a member of their family had gotten a phone call that sounded exactly like a member of their family, and so that's basically like a spear phishing phone call, where in some way a bad actor has gotten enough voice recordings in order to make a voice that'll say anything. And Jason, those of us that are podcasters and creators on YouTube, I think this is something for us to be aware of and even talk to our families about, to recognize that it is possible that if somebody wanted to directly target us, what I've heard now is it can be as little as 15 seconds of voice recording. They can create a reasonable facsimile of someone's voice. And that is very distressing and unfortunate. I think there are some people that have talked about having some kind of secret code word with their spouse or with their children. Because, I unfortunately had an experience in November where I was involved in an automobile accident. My phone was immediately texting my wife, telling her that I had been in an automobile accident. And I was able to call her and talk with her. But if you think about how much stress and concern is involved, especially if a loved one has actually been involved in some kind of harmful incident or very traumatic incident. These are things that we need to talk about, and I don't know that there's a 100% way, other than maybe FaceTiming. I guess I don't know. I don't know what the answer to this is, but anyway, here it is, election time, and we've got some deep fakes happening, and we probably shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and I've thought about that too. I've had that conversation with my parents. Had the conversation with my wife. I think it's important. We've been a target of spear phishing attacks in my day job institution, and tell people to be really cynical. There have been texts sent out to members of our faculty claiming to be me and asking them to do me a favor. And I think a lot of my faculty folks, probably would do me a favor if I asked. And so I think it's an important thing to talk about. And, it's a scary time out there for sure. And, we need to be thoughtful and a little cynical.
I mean, weirdly enough, iTunes gift cards are a way, I guess, that you can easily get money offshore. And I've worked for an institution in the past that had, bad actors imitate a leader of the organization, and they were able to successfully get some very smart and intelligent, certified, college-educated graduate program graduates, to send iTunes gift cards. And thankfully, in one case, after sending the first $100 gift card, they thought, maybe I should call their assistant and see if they're really here. And, sure enough, they called and found out there was no problem. So telling these stories is important. We need to remind people about how savvy the social engineering is getting, and how it's not just, oh, that's a clever idea. It is literally, replicating voices. And as I just shared with this Google luminary, and you can upload a picture, it's, the tools are going to just continue to get more and more robust, and they'll be able to be used for good purposes and bad. So, all right. Do you want to hit another article or two, and then we should probably Geek of the Week it?
Yeah, let's do a quick article from MIT. This is it's called Rethinking AI's Impact. MIT CSAIL study reveals economic limits to job automation. And it's interesting because I know a lot of very smart people that will talk to you about this. And I have a good friend who is a history teacher and thinks that the impact of AI will be limited in the same way that automation's impact will be limited as well. Nice, thoughtful, tech savvy guy, for sure. But this study from MIT suggests that there's only about 23% of wages paid for tasks involving vision are economically viable for AI automation. In other words, this is quoting directly from the article, it's only economically sensible to replace human labor with AI in about 1/4 of the jobs where vision is a key component of the work. And again, 1/4 is a significant amount, right? But that's a bit of a different game than, whole swaths of workers, 40, 50, 60, 70% of workers being replaced by AI at some point. And I think we're going to see this debate play out quite a bit in the next couple of years, especially as it relates to education, because of course, if AI replaces education, if AI it won't replace education, I promise that. If AI ends up replacing workers, right, that does change some of the focus for how we might choose to teach kids and what we want to get out of education, and the workforce development component of education, which is certainly not the only priority of education, but it is certainly a foundation of education, I think is a pretty important piece. And there is no completely accepted vision of how AI might impact workforces and jobs. And so I thought this was an interesting piece of this. This study is a recent release, so it does acknowledge the modern day functionality, and I'm interested in hearing more as people start to, kind of guesstimate what's going to happen in the relatively near future.
I've had some excellent conversations lately with a colleague at school and talking about, how do we measure productivity and if these AI tools enable us to realize comparable levels of productivity in less time or even greater levels, perhaps this is going to let us have lives and workplaces, filled with more health and wellness. When you think about how what was it called? Frederick Winslow Taylor production model was applied by Ford, and why do we do so many things that go back to Ford and the factory and wanting to prepare a large workforce for factory work. I really think that we need to rethink a lot of those things about school and helping students become critical thinkers, helping them become computational thinkers, emphasizing creativity. People have talked about the 4 C's, and there's all kinds of ways of thinking about this. But I think these are great, great topics for us to talk about, not only, pardon me, with colleagues who are teaching or administrating or doing any kind of educational role, but just in the public, because
Yeah.
the public decides who is elected, and elected officials decide how much funding schools get, and there's a big ecosystem of influences that shape what we have in terms of school. But I think rethinking school, thinking about the ways in which these tools are here to stay. Again, notwithstanding some kind of dramatic societal impact of, some kind of massive event or massive war. Like, we're going to keep using these tools, and we're going to need to be creative and resilient with them. And I think that those who are going to thrive in this environment are going to have a skill set that is not a mystery to professional educators and to college professors and a lot of folks who have been trying to develop well-rounded thinkers rather than just people who can pass tests. So AI is pretty good at passing tests.
And I would also encourage too, in the same light, a renewed focus on the humanities, right? Like, there's been a lot of focus in the last really 25 years to minimize their impact, but the humanities are really all about critical thinking and discussion and comparing points of view and comparing value. And I could not agree more that we need to be very thoughtful. And even though I have spent much of the last year talking about how education needs to focus on these types of AI technologies, my answer to that, and I identify as an AI centrist now, is that let's embrace them in the way that may help us evolve education, but let's not give up on the things that are valuable to us. And I think this is a really great example of the complexity of that discussion.
Absolutely. Well, hey, we actually got through all, but I think 4 of our articles, which is pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
So, do you want to share a geek of the week with us tonight?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. I continually experimenting with new sets of tools. This is something that I showed off, or a tool like this is something I showed off earlier in 2023. And in fact, Dr. Fryer, I know, uses the tool I've been using before, but ClipDrop is an AI set of tools for images or modifying images. It has a really wonderful AI upscaler. It costs $20 a month if you want the pro version, but you can utilize a less functional free version that's actually pretty darn functional. But if you work in graphics a lot, this is a wonderful tool set, and the upscaler is pretty great.
Wow. I'm going to overshare 3 quick ones. I'm so excited to have figured this out. I've used ChatGPT to help with some JavaScript coding on my Google site before to do a random image generator. Today, I was able to create roll call questions. And these are just little simple questions to use at the start of class to help me get to know students and them to know each other. There's 100. You click generate a roll call question, just click it again. It gives another one. Now, this actually took me about an hour to do. And it wasn't just like, hey, ChatGPT presented it, because those guardrails are real. And it definitely is trying to coach you more than just do the scripts for you. But again, I argued in all caps. And I was able to get it to, to do what I wanted it to do, and which was, help me. I'm a middle school coding teacher, and I don't have no JavaScript very well. So in the course of doing lots of AI experiments, I created a 7-part Mastodon thread that I've given a link to, and I just called it Recent AI Discoveries. Some of these things involve those guardrails, like ChatGPT won't show you in the link that you share the conversation images, but also won't provide downloaded files or advanced data analysis. But that makes me want to do more advanced data analysis. And there's also a host of other things that I included in here. I still can't figure out why sometimes I can get it to do a YouTube transcript and then other times it won't. Last thing is, this is coming from social media and an interaction with someone I don't know, but I'd not ever heard of this. Have you heard of Invidious before, Jason?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, it is an open source alternative front end to YouTube. And so you can utilize this to browse YouTube, to not be tracked at all, to subscribe to channels, to not have advertisements. It's in multiple languages, and it's a GitHub project. So anyway, that's pretty interesting. And so if you're interested in privacy, it's available. So where can folks find you on the interwebs when you're not here on Wednesday night, Jason?
Hey, I will probably keep working on updating the site, but I'm available at aicentrist.com.
That is fantastic. And I am on multiple platforms. Mastodon's still my favorite right now, but I'm available at westfryer.com/after. So this has been the EdTech Situation Room, a weekly podcast where we take a look at the tech news. We want to thank Betsy and her husband for joining us. Thank you so much. And invite you to join us live if you're able to. We're here on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Mountain, whatever that happens to translate to in your neck of the woods. You can subscribe to us on Facebook and on YouTube. And we are also still trying to keep up with the publication on our edtechsr.com website. And you can always go to edtechsr.com/links. We're no longer on Twitter, but we are posting updates on Facebook and Mastodon. And wherever you happen to be, we encourage you to stay savvy, stay safe, and hope to see you next time on the EdTech Situation Room. Good night.
Good night.